Today I'm going to take you with me along the gorgeous Fira to Ia hike. It's our #1 most recommended activity when you visit Santorini. You can do the hike in either direction. Today I'll be beginning here on the main plaza in Fira in front of the Metropolitan Cathedral. The hike takes between 3 to 5 hours depending how often you stop. You'll want to make sure to bring some water, though there are some places along the way to eat and drink, more so in the Fira to Imerovigli part of the hike. We recommend a sturdy pair of shoes, or at least something more substantial than flip-flops or other open-toed shoes that aren't well attached to your feet. It's a good idea to get started early in the morning, and an umbrella for a hot day is another great idea. We've got lots more detailed information about what to expect and how to make the most of the hike in our Santorini travel guide, and I'll link to that page in the description below this video. Enjoy the hike! So coming in here from Fira, I'm on the main plaza in Firostefani, roughly halfway between Fira and Imerovigli, and this begins the pedestrian-only zone here that eventually leads you all the way to Imerovigli. So we got Remvi restaurant down here on the left. Ooh, there's Skaros Rock, and wonderful view down there. And this begins the pedestrian walkway that takes you all the way to Imerovigli, which is, about a 10 to 20 minute walk, depending on which part of Imerovigli you're heading to. There is a bunch of commerce along here, food, restaurants, travel agencies, all kinds of stuff, souvenir shops, mini markets with cold drinks, and it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to get from here to Imerovigli. I'll show you what it looks like along the way. Some boutique shops, sunscreen, bottles of wine, fish and chips and sushi, traditional restaurant and cafe with coffee, souvlaki, gyros. Along the way, Da Vinci restaurant is another great one. Italian food with a view facing away from the caldera. And you slowly begin to rise here. Imerovigli is the highest point on the caldera. So if you're heading from Firostefani toward Imerovigli, it's going to be a slight incline along the way. Another one of our favorite hotels right here, the Citteras Collection, has a gorgeous pool, one of the nicest in all of the caldera here. Beautiful spot. And continuing on toward Imerovigli. And moving right along, exiting Firostefani and heading toward Imerovigli. This is a section of the path that isn't surrounded by commerce on both sides. There's actually a small kind of garden with a couple of olive trees here in this section, and the road is just right on the right side. That's the road between Imerovigli and Fira. And you can see the church up above with the blue dome. It begins to flatten out there as it goes along the ridge of Imerovigli. So we began our hike today over here in Fira and then passed through Firostefani. And then this is the part that begins to go uphill, coming out of Firostefani on our way to Imerovigli, which is just around this bend. You see this church, you go another couple hundred meters, and then it levels out as you cut across Imerovigli. So right here, I'm standing in the middle of Imerovigli, and I just wanted to give you a little orientation. So this is the southern tip of Santorini. Way out here is Akrotiri. And then down here is the ferry port. You'll see a number of cruise ships docked here. Well, they're not docked, but in here inside the caldera. The cruise ships use smaller boats called tenders for their passengers to get aboard. But this is the ferry port, and then up here you have Fira, and coming along the edge of the caldera, this is the first half of Imerovigli that you'll see. And then I'm going to walk around to the other side here to show you the head, facing the direction of Ia, the other side of Imerovigli. And then I'm going to walk around the corner, and you'll be able to see the rest of Imerovigli. You'll see Skaros Rock and Ia off in the distance. There are a number of photographers in Santorini who you can rent these dresses and then they will photograph you in the scene wearing these beautiful flowing dresses. When there's wind, those long dresses flap in the distance quite beautifully. So just another peek before we go around the corner here. Again, Fira, Firostefani, in the beginning of Imerovigli. And Skaros Rock here comes into the picture. This is a St. George Church, and we're gonna come up here and around that corner. Thank you. And then right here, Ia comes into visibility off in the distance. This is the point right in Imerovigli where if you wanted to walk around Skaros Rock, you would descend down this path. Now, if you're coming from this direction, which is north, the direction of, that's Ia in the distance, you've been walking along, or you're just in Imerovigli, it's not very well signed that this is where you would make the turn. You may be coming from this direction in Imerovigli, having come from Fira or Firostefani, around, just past that church and around the corner is sort of the southern half of Imerovigli. And then this right here, as you turn the corner, that leads to the, you know, the other half, the northern half of Imerovigli. But like I was saying, if you're coming on this path, there's no sign telling you that if you wanted to go down and hike around Skaros Rock around here, which is wonderful, that this is the turn that you would make. Now, right over here is Grace Hotel. They've got a beautiful pool that you can see right there. And the trail goes down many steps and sort of skirts the pool, and then some switchbacks of stairs out and around Skaros Rock. Some people climb up on top, which is very dangerous, I think, and best avoided. But if you hike down here, you get beautiful views of the caldera because you're looking back. So in the distance, you've got Thracia Island. Over here is Ia. And the trail that goes down Skaros Rock goes all the way around. On the far side, which we can't see, but on the lower downside, there's a beautiful church down there. And it's definitely worth making a visit to the church if you go to Skaros Rock. Whether it's part of the Fira Ia trail or just a smaller hike on its own. I'm gonna step back out of the wind here. Hopefully the sound is okay. But again, Skaros Rock is a wonderful hike. And this is the junction that's not marked very well, that if you want to go down, you're gonna make this turn. All right, so we're in Imerovigli so far, and we're going to be following that Caldera Rim trail all the way into Ia, where we'll finish the hike. All right, so we're passing through Imerovigli here. And that's Ia off in the distance. Get to pass by all these beautiful hotels. This transition out of the main hotel zone in Imerovigli. It still continues on ahead of us, but it's kind of leaving the densely packed part of Imerovigli and turning more into a trail. And from here you begin to really be able to see that crescent caldera rim that you'll be walking from here to there, which is amazing. So as you come out of that dense section of Imerovigli, there's a piece right here with no hotels. Eventually you've got Andronis Concept here, or Andronis Wellness on the right. And this little saddle along here is still called Imerovigli, even though it's kind of separate from the heart of the village. And it's just amazing to be able to see where you'll be hiking over the next couple hours here. And the trail goes up and over parts and just varying trail along the way. And from the gravel back onto a paved surface here. So throughout it's just kind of alternating as we continue along. But even though this section of the trail is wide enough to drive a car on and paved, look at the drop off down the cliff right here, just off the edge, with no rail of any kind. So many parts of the trail have that kind of drop off. It's easy to stay safe, but it's also kind of crazy how far the drop is right here. So you even get to pass some dumpsters along the way here. These are more hotels on the saddle in Imerovigli. This right up here is actually Cavo Tagu Santorini, which is one of the best, one of our favorite hotels in Santorini. Cavo Tagu has a fabulous restaurant and bar. Even if you're not staying, it's a great place for a romantic dinner. And again, right in this section, it's paved and you've even got cars driving along here, but it's part of the trail. So again, right up here, we're gonna go from this kind of cobblestone stone pathway into a dirt path up there as we leave Imerovigli. But from this perspective, you can get a sense that we came all the way and we're a little bit lower than Imerovigli. Imerovigli is actually the highest point on the caldera. So we came from way up there. You can see Skaros Rock, which is in the middle of Imerovigli. So it came all the way down there on that path and continuing along. And pretty soon, we're gonna turn into a dirt road and up and over. All right, so we just left Imerovigli. That was Nobu Hotel we last passed. And here along the trail, what do you got here?
Yes, my friend.
Nice, what are you selling?
Firestone.
Beautiful. It's got figs and grapes and watermelon and cold drinks. Beautiful.
Mama.
And he's apparently with his mom. Looking good. And we begin a little bit of a steep climb here, up and around the bend here, and then keep going. So we just came through here, and this is the first point at which all of a sudden the other side of the island opens up. And so you can, in the distance, you can see the airport. The landing strip is hard to make out, but it's in that direction. That's over where Kamari is. Behind that little mountaintop, you've got the observatory at the top, and behind that would be Parissa Beach. So we just exited Imerovigli there, and all of a sudden, the east side, is that the east? No, that's the west side of the island is opening up. And again, you can see E off in the distance. This is Thracia, Skaros Rock, Palio and Neokameni, and Akrotiri off in the distance. But this was the first point in the hike that opened up to both sides of the island. And you got a little church up here too. Cobblestone road or path at this point. So along the way, you've got some churches like that just off the path that you can visit if you choose to. So as you come up this hill, don't be confused or discouraged. Of course, they would benefit from a sign here. This is a walking path, brings you down closer to the road. This is another path that brings you to this beautiful church. You can keep going here and stay more on the Caldera side on a less defined path. And if you are coming or going on this path, they both will come back together in both directions. So you can't make a mistake here. But of course, a sign would be helpful here, but unfortunately it doesn't exist. And along the way, there are various churches like this. Some of them are right on the trail, and some of them are a little bit off the trail, and it's up to you whether you want to poke around and check them out or not. So there's not a ton of places where it's necessary, but there are some spots where a little more signage could be helpful. So again, there was another path on the backside that went down to the road, and this one hugs the Caldera path, or the Caldera rim, and sticks with a much more beautiful view without having to go closer to the road. And then again, along the way, you have a gentleman here selling cold drinks, cold beer and drinks and some fruit. Just hanging out here in this tiny little patch of shade. Oh, this is such a beautiful stretch right here. Again, you can see where you're hiking to E off in the distance, but this just feels like a more traditional hike. There is a full stone path, which is quite groovy, but there's no commerce, no cars, and it's just amazing. And right as I say that, we open up again where there's another couple hotels on the saddle here. So right here, we have two of our favorite hotels on Santorini. It's called Imerovigli, but it's further along on the road to Ia. There are two beautiful hotels on the saddle. The first one down here is much bigger. It's called San Antonio. And the second one, which is just a handful of beautiful suites and quite exclusive, is called Aeneon, A-E-N-A-O-N Villas, and just gorgeous properties in a very secluded spot right here. And you can see the road here from Imerovigli to Ia off in the distance. So this is the section of the trail right at San Antonio and Aeneon, where briefly the trail follows the road and you need to walk along the road. And then down there, you pick the path up again and it leaves the highway. So this is the only stretch of the trail where that happens, but there's maybe half a kilometer or so, a couple 100 yards, where the trail leaves the caldera and comes on this side, and you have to walk along the road. You'll remember earlier I was at that junction where I said you can go both ways. The one that came up on the hillside was here, that follows the road. But the more enjoyable one is that trail that goes on the Caldera side of that hill. So both will get you there, but the one that stays to the Caldera side is more enjoyable. So here's another cafe. This is the spot where the trail goes back onto the Caldera and away from the road. Right here next to this cafe where you can stop for a cold beverage or lunch or whatever after your stretch of walking along the highway for a little bit. And again, back off the road and onto a gravel path. So there's a couple places like this where the trail's broken, but you have such a wide path that it's easy to stay safe and is not very dangerous or scary. But there are spots like this along the way, or where it gets more narrow. And again, kind of uneven surfaces where you wouldn't want to be wearing flip-flops for this section of the hike. So there are not many, but there are sections of the trail that have barbed wire like this, either to section off a piece of private land or just to prevent people from approaching a zone that's unstable or unsafe from the cliff. Eventually, Ia comes into view, and it's all downhill from here, and you can just see this beautiful village. And just arriving into gorgeous Ia here, with hotels on both sides of the path and just a magnificent view of the village. And coming into the heart of the village, this is more or less the end of the trail. It's, 5 to 10 minutes here walking along the road into the central plaza at the entrance to the village. But more or less, you can say that this is the end of the Fira to Ia trail. So looking back, we can see Skaros Rock and Imerovigli, and just behind that is Fira. Fira is barely visible in the distance. You can see those cruise ships. Those are docked just off of Fira. And we have arrived in Ia, just in time for a cold beer or drink or gelato or whatever, and looking out over the caldera while relaxing.
Santorini Dave is your #1 source for everything Santorini related, from the best hotels, restaurants, and beaches to our favorite wineries, caldera boat tours, and how to hike the Fira to Ia trail. We also make awesome maps and provide details on getting to the island, getting around during your trip, visiting local villages away from the caldera, and other great activities to enjoy. Thanks for watching.